Please listen to the following teachings with the proper Mahayana motivation, which is to attain enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings. So the following teaching is the continuation of last week's and the week before that's teaching, which is the Lama Tsongkhapa's short masterpiece, which is known as the three principal aspects of the path. Okay, you can sit down. You can sit after. Yeah, sit down. Okay. So the three principal aspects, or in other words, the three key points of the path. So another way of understanding the three principal aspects is the three key points of the path are renunciation, so not ordinary renunciation, not just mere renunciation, but renunciation of samsara as a whole. That is what is known as the pure renunciation. Then the bodhicitta, which is the mindset towards attaining enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings. That is fueled by altruism. So that is bodhicitta. And the third is what we are going to cover today, which is known as the wisdom. And just like renunciation, there are many types of wisdom. So wisdom in general is a mental factor, is a set of mind that is able to distinguish between what is right and what is wrong. And so that is a mind that is able to thoroughly discriminate what is right and what is wrong, what is to be adopted and what is to be aborted. Which has a mind that has a clear-cut vision of that is known as a wisdom. And there are many types of wisdom. And out of all the wisdoms, we will be talking about the wisdom that realizes the nature of all phenomena. And that is also, the nature of all phenomena is also known as emptiness. And in other words, we will be talking about the wisdom, not ordinary wisdom, but the wisdom that realizes emptiness. Okay, now in order to talk about the wisdom that realizes emptiness, we have to be aware of what emptiness is in the first place. So wisdom that realizes emptiness is the subject, and the emptiness that the wisdom realizes is the object. So in order to realize the subject, first we have to know what the object is. And here the object is emptiness. And even though we have talked about emptiness many times before, I think it's never enough, because we have to familiarize ourselves with the idea of emptiness as much as we can, because we have been familiarized, we have been accustomed to the opposite of emptiness for such a long time, for eons and eons, for limitless time. And so therefore, in order to get out of that addiction towards the opposite of emptiness, which is towards the stubborn attachment towards things appearing or things forming from its own self substantially and solidly. So in order to deconstruct that, in order to detox ourselves from such wrong views, we need to be familiarized with the idea of emptiness more and more and more, as much as we can. So let me read through the first passage of today's topic, which is the wisdom that realizes the nature of things, wisdom realizing emptiness. Okay, so that is point number 9. The verse number 9. If you lack the wisdom that realizes the nature of things, although you might grow accustomed to renunciation and bodhicitta, you will be incapable of cutting through conditioned existence at its root. Exert yourself, therefore, in the methods of realizing interdependence. So renunciation and first renunciation and then bodhicitta, of course, is primarily important to practice in order to achieve enlightenment. But these two alone are not sufficient for one to get to the because enlightenment means taking clearing all the negativities and enlightenment means clearing all the doubts, clearing all the afflictive emotions. And in order to do that, bodhicitta and renunciation alone is not enough. So, of course, renunciation takes care of a very dangerous opponent, which is the attachment towards samsara. And then bodhicitta takes care of another very dangerous opponent or dangerous hurdle, very treacherous hurdle, which is the self-grasping attitude. Even though it takes care of the self-grasping attitude at the surface level, but bodhicitta alone cannot root out the self-grasping attitude, because self-grasping attitude itself is rooted in what is known as the grasping of the inherent existence. So when you are grasping at something, that exists inherently, then as long as you grasp upon an object that is existing inherently, the self-grasping attitude related to that object will also rise. So therefore, in order to get rid of the self-grasping attitude, which the bodhicitta is trying to take care of, you will need to root out. Sometimes we call self-grasping attitude is usually known as the root of samsara, and then the inherent grasping attitude is known as the root of samsara, or sometimes known as the ultimate root of samsara. So the root of samsara is self-grasping attitude, and the grasping of inherent existence is known as the ultimate the root of samsara. Meaning, when you take out the ultimate root, when you take out the root of the roots, then the root itself falls down, and when the root is rotten and the root is broken, then the tree will fall no matter what. So therefore, therefore we need the wisdom that realizes the nature of phenomena, nature of all things, in order to take care of, in order to achieve enlightenment. We need to take care of these three, especially the third one, because in order to attain enlightenment, we need to get rid of all the negative emotions or afflictive emotions. And the afflictive emotions, though we can fight with the afflictive emotions on a face-to-face basis, but in order to root them out, or in order to root out the root of the samsara, or the root out all the afflictive emotions, we need the wisdom that realizes the nature of all the things that we are dealing with, or in other words, the nature of all things, nature of all phenomena. So therefore, sometimes we call it with the, last week we talked about the bodhicitta and renunciation being the two sides of the same coin, right? So let's think of that as a double-edged sword. So the bodhicitta and the renunciation are both ends of a double-edged sword. But even if a sword has two edges, but if the edge is not sharp enough, then it cannot cut through the ropes or whatever, or the enemy that you are fighting with, for example. So therefore, the sharpness comes from the wisdom aspect. So the wisdom is the sharpness of that of the sword that you have, that you are wielding. So even if you do have the sword of the double-edged sword of renunciation and bodhicitta, if you don't have wisdom, then it's a sword nonetheless, but the sword without any sharp edges, and so therefore it is obsolete. Okay. So if you look at the last line of the first today's first verse, verse number 9, there is this line called saying, "Exert yourself, therefore, in the methods for realizing interdependence." So we are talking about wisdom that realizes the nature of things. We are talking about the wisdom of emptiness, or wisdom realizing emptiness. So where does this topic of interdependence comes in? Does emptiness usually means empty, nothing, right? So interdependence means depending upon the interrelation between things depending upon each other, the interactive relation between things depending upon each other. So what's the connection here between interdependence and emptiness? So in order to understand that more deeply, we need to know what emptiness means. So emptiness does not mean completely empty, or in other words, nothingness or voidness, complete vacuum. So this is not what we are talking about when we talk about emptiness. Instead of saying empty, we are saying emptiness. Instead of, in Tibetan, empty is Tongpa, but we call it Tongpa Ni, not Tongpa. There is a suchness, or there is a nature of being empty there. So there is a nature there. So when there is a nature, there is something forthcoming. It is not completely vacuum. So therefore, emptiness means not complete empty, or completely void, complete void. This is not what we mean when we talk about emptiness. Of course, Buddha used the word emptiness, but it does not mean emptiness in the ordinary sense, that there is nothing there. So what we are talking about when we use the term emptiness is, of course, the emptiness of the empty nature of inherent existence. When we say the emptiness of a cup, we are not saying the cup is no longer there, or that the cup has no drink in the cup, but we are talking about the empty, or the voidness of inherent existence within the structure of the cup, within the existence of the cup. This is what we are talking about when we say the emptiness of a cup. So therefore, because if there is an inherent if the cup is existing inherently, then it does not need to rely upon the atoms and the different molecules that construct it to become a cup. And if that is the case, then the cup is always a cup, or is never a cup, because it depends upon the causes and condition which has to be constructed, which has to be assembled for the cup to become a cup. Therefore, the cup is a cup by depending upon other forms and factors. So therefore, it is interdependently a cup. It is not inherently a cup. A cup is not inherently a cup, but it is a cup through dependence upon other forms and factors. So therefore, the question of interdependency comes in. And this is what we will cover in the next line. When we talk about so in the next line, verse number 10, here we talk about the first line of the verse number 10 is, the ones who sees that cause and effect operate infallibly for all the phenomena of samsara and nirvana. So the cause and conditions, the cause and effect, cause and effect, the cause and result, or the cause and effect. The question of cause and effect comes here because we are talking about interdependency. So the one who sees that cause and effect operate infallibly for all the phenomena of samsara and nirvana, and for whom any objects of conceptual focus has subsided, that person has set upon the path delighting all the Buddhas. So this is very important, and the reason this is important is because the topic of emptiness is actually covered by all the. So there are four schools of Buddhist thoughts. There are four schools of Buddhist thoughts, four Buddhist philosophical schools, and there it is known as the Vaibhashiks, the Sautrantikas, the Chittamatrins, and the Madhyamikas, or the particularists, the Sutra followers, the mind-only school, and the middle way school. So they all they all talk about they all assert the topic of emptiness. Because if you remember if you are aware of the four seals of the Four Noble Seals, one of that is that all phenomena are empty and are selfless. All phenomena are empty and are selfless. So in this regard, all the Buddhist schools accept the idea of emptiness. But the level of emptiness varies. It's from amongst the four schools of Buddhist thoughts. So in this regard, even though even the philosophically inferior schools such as the Vaibhashiks, the particularists, also accept the idea of emptiness, but their idea of emptiness and the idea of emptiness from the Madhyamika's point of view are totally different. So even though they do assert the idea of emptiness, but their idea is so in order to so for all the lower schools of Buddhist philosophical thoughts, all the schools of thoughts other than the middle way school, especially the Prasangika Madhyamika. So within the Madhyamika there are two schools, Sautrantika Madhyamika and the Prasangika Madhyamikas. So in the Prasangika Madhyamika, which is the philosophically most superior viewpoint, and from that viewpoint, all the other schools of Buddhist thought, when they exert emptiness, they are actually, they think, all the schools other than that of the Prasangika Madhyamika school usually believe that if things are empty, things are inherently empty, then they cannot exist. If they cannot exist, then they cannot function. A cause cannot function an effect. If a cause cannot function an effect, that means a mother cannot give birth to a baby, a seed cannot give birth or generate a flower, or so therefore, meaning nothing can function infallibly without fail in this world. But since everything is functioning as it is, that means things are existing from its own side. There is something inherently there. Something does exist out there, therefore it functions. So this is the idea. So for things to function infallibly and to be empty of having inherent existence is an idea that is unthinkable to anyone other than the Madhyamika school, especially anyone other than Prasangika Madhyamika school. Even within Madhyamika, the Sautrantika Madhyamikas, they do exert the existence of the inherent existence. Thus, things existing inherently is something they do assert. So their understanding of emptiness is that things do not exist realistically, or things do not exist realistically. That is their interpretation. But things do exist inherently. So only the Prasangika Madhyamika school exert that things do not exist inherently. So from that point of view, anything that function cannot, from the point of view other than that of the Prasangika Madhyamika, which is the highest of all the philosophical views of the Buddhist school of thought, if things are not existing inherently, if things are not existing naturally, then they cannot function naturally. They cannot function infallibly. So therefore, that means everything is in chaos. But since everything is in order, the laws of causality does function. That means things do exist inherently. So what Lama Tsongkhapa here is saying is that as long as you believe that if things if you believe that things existing inherently, things not existing inherently, things cannot exist inherently, but still can function infallibly, as long as you have that viewpoint, that means you are pleasing the Buddha, or in other words, you are on the path that pleases the Buddha. So what pleases the Buddha? The Buddha's wish is for us to become enlightened. And that means for the Buddha to be pleased, we have to be on the path of enlightenment. So what Lama Tsongkhapa is implying here is two things. One is that to have such an idea, that things not existing inherently, things empty of having an inherent existence, and also being able to function infallibly, causes able to function, causes able to generate effects, and so on and so forth. That is the path towards enlightenment, because this is the path that pleases the Buddha. First thing. A second thing is that this is the view that Lama Tsongkhapa himself also holds, which means he is the holder of not only the Madhyamika point of view, but within the Madhyamika school, the Sautantrika Madhyamika and the Prasangika Madhyamika, he is holder of the Prasangika Madhyamika, which is the highest of all the Madhyamika school of thoughts. So, in contrast to the previous line, the previous verse, verse number 10, the verse number 11, in contrast to the verse number 10, says that if the knowledge that appearances arise unfailingly in dependence, and the knowledge that they are empty and beyond all decisions, as long as they too appear to you as separate, there can be no realization of the Buddha's wisdom. So, so here the first line uses the term appearance. So appearance is the interpretation or translation of the Tibetan word nawa, which can also be translated as light, illumination, formation, and construction, so and so like that. So if you look at it in another perspective, like think of emptiness as darkness, destruction, and nothingness, and then all the opposite, or on one side you have emptiness, which is darkness, which is destruction, in a sense that when for example, when we say the cup is empty, we are talking about the cup is no longer constructive of the object within that it contains. For example, when there is water in the cup, we do not call it an empty cup. But when the water is removed, so in other words, when the water is destroyed or deconstructed, then we call it an empty cup. So in this regard, we can think of emptiness as a deconstruction, and then on the other side we have the construction, we have the light, we have the appearance, we have the formation, right? So in this regard, interdependency is the appearance or the formation aspect. So in Tibetan, we usually use the word, we use the term nawa. So nawa can be translated as appearance, or also light as formation, things like that. So usually, even in science, everything, the color, everything that we see comes into our vision through light. If there is no light, we cannot see anything. So the formation of color, the formation of forms comes through our perception because of light. So in this regard, nawa is the light, the appearance, the formation, the construction side aspect, and emptiness is the deconstruction side. So as long as, so in simple terms, the construction and the deconstruction, if you think of these two as, so the construction, the constructive aspect of interdependency and the deconstructive aspect of emptiness, if you think these in different terms, if you think of those two entities in separate terms, as long as you have that idea, as long as you hold on to that idea, then you are straying away. You are straying from the path that is pleasing the Buddha. You are straying from the path of enlightenment. So, the appearance is another term, or is a synonym for interdependency here. And empty, the second verse, which says, and the knowledge that they are empty. Empty is, of course, the reference to emptiness. And so beyond all assertions, this is a very important aspect of the Prasangika Madhyamika view. So as long as you are asserting something, as long as for an ordinary person like us, whenever we assert something, we assert that thing with the conviction that they do exist inherently. So, for example, for us to assert anything, without a slightest amount of the conviction that things they are existing inherently is very difficult. Even though we can form the word saying there is no inherent existing, but instinctively we feel as we are stuck with the idea that things do exist inherently. So therefore, whenever we assert something, then we are asserting that things are inherently existing. So therefore, beyond assertion means this is the meaning of beyond assertion. As long as these two appear to be separate, then there can be no realization of the Buddha's wisdom. So now we have a vague idea of what emptiness is, and so therefore the wisdom realizing emptiness is about. But that does not mean we are familiar with the wisdom, and not to mention that we have internalized that wisdom within ourselves. So what does it mean? What is the sign of being able to of having attained such a wisdom within ourselves? What is the perfection of that wisdom looks like? So this is explained by Lama Tsongkhapa in the next line. Which goes like this: when you know that yet when they arise at once, so they meaning the appearance and the emptiness. So the appearance and emptiness are not. We are familiar with the idea of appearance, right? That means interdependency, and empty means emptiness. So there is the construction and there is the deconstruction. So the construction and deconstruction are not separate, but one thing. It's when these two ideas are able to arise at once, not each in turn, not one after another, but together at once. And through merely seeing the unfailing dependent origination, by merely seeing the appearance, certainly is born and all the modes of misapprehension fall apart. Meaning, by merely seeing dependency, by merely seeing appearance, by merely seeing the construction, the deconstruction also begins. So when you construct an object, such as a cup, the deconstruction of the object as an inherently existing phenomena also happens at the same time. That is when the discernment of the view has reached perfection. Meaning that is when you have internalized the perfection of wisdom. Okay, now the next line, verse number 13, is the most unique aspect of the Prasangika Madhyamika view. Most unique explanation, succinctly explaining the Madhyamika point of view in just 4 lines. So that is, when you know that appearance dispel the extreme of existence, while the extreme of nothingness is eliminated by emptiness. So this is very beautiful. It's quite poetic in a way, because usually when we talk about appearance, when we talk about formation, everything comes into existence. Everything is extremely existing in the sense that everything does come naturally. Everything comes inherently. But once you have reached once you have attained the wisdom of wisdom realizing the nature of all phenomena, then you know that when things appear, that means things do not exist inherently. So appearance of things being able to dispel the extreme of existence. This is the beauty of Prasangika Madhyamika. All the other philosophical views, the appearance cannot dispel the extreme of existence or the inherent existence. Only the emptiness can dispel the extreme of existence. But with the Prasangika Madhyamika, the unique twist here is that appearances, the constructive aspect of interdependency, is able to dispel the extreme view of inherent existence. And at the same time, the deconstructive view, deconstructive attitude or view of emptiness is able to dispel the extreme of nihilism, that nothing exists, nothing exists. So when usually we talk about emptiness, we think there is nothing, but this is wrong view. For someone who has realized the view, when they talk about emptiness, then something comes, something remains. When emptiness, we're talking about emptiness, we're not talking about nothingness. We are talking about the emptiness of inherent existence. So therefore, when things are empty of having an inherent nature, then what remains is the thing themselves. Things are empty of inherent nature, but things do exist. Things do not exist inherently, which means things do exist, but without an inherent attachment to it. So when you come to know this reality, this truth, then the idea that emptiness can also produce within the sphere of emptiness the function of cause and effect is also possible. So that when you reach to such a mileage, when you reach to such a stage, then you will be immune to any view entailing clinging to the extremes. Okay, so this is the conclusion. When in this way you have, okay, last verse. When in this way you have correctly understood. So when you understand the previous, all the previous lines, the key points of the three principal aspects of the path. Once you have understood the three key principal aspects of the path, then withdraw to solitude, dear son, strengthen your diligence, and swiftly accomplish the ultimate and lasting aim. So Lama Tsongkhapa was this was sent to, okay, so if you read in the colophon that this advice was given by Bhikshu of extensive learning, Lobsang Thakpe Pel. Lobsang Thakpe Pel is the name of Lama Tsongkhapa. The actual name, Tsongkhapa, is not his real name, because the one Tsongkhapa literally means the one from the Valley of Onions. So the place where Lama Tsongkhapa came from has a lot of is a valley where there grow a lot of onions. Actually, the place in the he came from the Amdo region of Tibet, which usually eats a lot of the onion springs and the chives and these kind of these kind of vegetables. So where Lama Tsongkhapa came from is a place where there's a valley which has a lot of onions. Tsong in Tibetan means onions. Tsongkhapa means the one who came from the valley of onions. But his actual name is Lobsang Thakpa. So, and he gave this he sent this message to Tsako Wombo. Ngawang Thakpa is the real name. Tsako is his family name, and the Wombo, as I said before, can be translated as a chief or also as a cousin or a nephew. Anyway, now once you have understand the three principal aspects of the path, then you must withdraw to the solitude, and then you must practice on these things. And then with this, I wish that you will be able to accomplish the ultimate and lasting aim of enlightenment. So what Lama Tsongkhapa here tells us in these 4 lines, most important thing is if you know, if you understand, and if you put into practice the 3 principal aspects of the path, then that is the only thing that you need to attain enlightenment. Nothing more, nothing extraordinary, nothing extra, 3 principal aspects of the path: renunciation, bodhicitta, and emptiness. If you have these 3, then ultimate the enlightenment is guaranteed. Okay, so that is the conclusion of the teaching, and I believe we have some questions.
Richard, we have a couple of questions. I'm going to read them.
Yeah.
Rinpoche, can you please share a simple method to accumulate wisdom? In other words, can you please share a simple method to sharpen our sword to cut through self-grasping attitude? Thank you, Rinpoche.
So I think this is one of the unique aspects of the Tibetan Buddhism, which is, sort of the lineage is directly sort of sourced towards the Nalanda tradition. So Tibetan Buddhism and the Nalanda tradition are have a remarkable resemblance in many ways. So one of which is the analytical aspect of it. So analysis of ultimate truth, analysis of the Buddha's teaching, analysis of anything that so investigation, analyzing, researching, studying, all these are aspects of the Nalanda tradition, which is very much alive in the Tibetan Buddhism. So in some tradition, the meditation is the key point of the enlightenment, key point to achieve enlightenment, and you are told to meditate from the very beginning. But in order to meditate, meditation is like driving a car. But in order to drive the car, you need fuel. And that fuel comes from studying. That fuel comes from investigation. But in order to investigate, you need to study first. You need to have a certain knowledge of what's going on. And once you are aware of the functioning, once you are aware of what is going on, then you can investigate on whether what is going on is the right thing or not right thing. And when you are able to establish what is right and what is wrong, not entirely for the whole universe, but for yourself, what is right and what is wrong, what is appropriate and what is not appropriate, then you will be able to apply them more appropriately, and therefore deal with your own negativities, your own challenges. You will be able to deal with your challenges much better. But if you are just to sit there and do meditation, what are you going to meditate? If you are told to drive, where are you going to drive? You don't have any destination. Let's say the destination is the enlightenment, but you do not know the way, you do not have any fuel, anything. So therefore, accumulation, there are two types of accumulation, right? Accumulation of merit and accumulation of wisdom. So accumulation of wisdom has got nothing to do with prostration or all the prostration, reciting, this kind of thing. Of course, I'm not saying this is not important. I'm not saying this is not part of Buddhist practice. What I'm saying is within the two aspects of accumulation, with accumulation of wisdom, only studying, first studying or learning, either through reading or through hearing from people, and then putting into practice, analyzing what you have read, analyzing what you have heard. This teacher says that, this teacher says this, so how am I going to make sense of these two contradictions? So you have to analyze everything, and then once you have settled down upon a certain explanation, certain interpretation of the text of the Buddha's intention, what the Buddha was talking about, then you have to solidify that through meditation. So meditation is the third stage. Tö sam gomsum. In Tibetan we say Toba is learning, either through reading or through hearing, and Samba is to analyze, to contemplate, right? Learning, contemplating, and then meditating, right? So meditation is not the first step, but is the sort of last step. But it doesn't mean at the very end, very last thing. The last step is, as in, if you want to meditate on emptiness, you have to first learn about emptiness, then contemplate on emptiness, and then meditate on emptiness. So the same thing goes with impermanence or anything that you are going to do. So it doesn't mean you study everything first for like 50, 60 years, and then at the end of your life, then you start meditating. That's not the thing. So when we say meditate, learn, contemplate, and meditate, we are talking about putting these three things into practice upon every little practice that you are doing. So this is called contemplation as accumulation of wisdom depends entirely on reading thoroughly, reading widely, learning widely, learning thoroughly. So that's why I think I told you many times, you have to learn, you have to study, you have to read many books, different books, you have to listen to speaking from many different teachers. It's very important. Whether you regard that person as your teacher, your guru or not, is up to you. You have to check the qualifications of that guru, but you can always take lessons from them. It does not mean that just because you have taken a lesson, you are bound to be their student, sort of like that person becomes your guru and you are their student, and therefore you cannot break that chain and this kind of thing. So there is no such bondage, and people do interpret it in such ways to manipulate, unfortunately. But there is no such bondage in Buddha's teaching. When Buddha was teaching, anybody can come, anybody can leave. There is no bondage here. But of course, there's the anyway. There's the talk of guru and student relationship, which is another matter. But in general, just because you listen to somebody's teaching does not mean they become your guru, and then you are bound to get your guru for eternity. The most important thing is learn.
The second question, Rinpoche. Prostrate to Rinpoche, will you please explain if someone chanting many or Amitabha mantras merely, just as most of the Chinese Buddhists and some of the Tibetans who might not know the emptiness or renunciation, is there a chance or is there any chance or to be free from samsara?
So okay, let me give you an example. So if you run outside, if you keep running to a certain direction, you will reach somewhere. So let's say if you keep running towards south, then you will reach many different places, many different destinations in the southern part. But if you keep running on the treadmill at your home, no matter how long you run, of course on the display it will say you have run for 10 kilometers, 20 kilometers, whatever. But no matter how much and how fast you run, you will always be in your home or in your gym. But if you keep running every day for 2 hours or if you train yourself in the gym for 2 hours, 4 hours every day on the treadmill, the chances are, even though you still remain in your home, the moment that you are able to go out of your home, you go outside your home, and when you run on the road outside, then you will be able to run very fast for a very long time. You will be able to build up your stamina. So similarly, so we talk about the two accumulations. Accumulation of merit and accumulation of wisdom. So accumulation of merit does not directly root out ignorance. Accumulation of merit, so the reciting and the chanting and these kind of things are accumulation of merit, not accumulation of wisdom. So they do not directly produce the result of enlightenment, but they do produce the strength, the stamina. They build up the stamina within you for you to run longer and faster. So it does build up with the accumulation of the wisdom, accumulation of the merit, then you have the stamina and the strength to cut through the fallacy of ignorance, fallacy of appearance. I told you before that emptiness or the wisdom aspect, the emptiness, the wisdom realizing emptiness is like the sharp edges of a sword or an axe. Even if the sword is very sharp, but if the body of the sword or the axe is weak, so no matter how sharp it is, even with one blow, instead of being able to being able to fell the tree, the axe itself will be broken. So even though the sharp edges of the axe is important, at the same time, the body of the axe also has to be very strong in order to withstand the force of the blow when you are felling a tree. So therefore, both are important, and I think you got the idea with the analogy that I've given. Okay, I think that's it, right? Okay, we conclude here. Yeah, and
no more
dedicate the
questions.
merit. Yes, thank you. Thank you everyone for your time. Thank you for sharing your weekend with us, and thank you for sharing your Dharma practice with us. And so let's dedicate all the merits that we have gained today for the sake of enlightenment, for attaining enlightenment, for the sake of all sentient beings.
Hồi hướng.
Everyone,